The agenda this week talked transit in the province's capital city and got a wide-angled view on solving homelessness. The agenda's Week in Review begins reflecting on the outcome of federal election 2019.
All three leaders came out and they gave a speech as if they all won the election, when in fact they all lost the election. You know, Justin Trudeau returns as Prime Minister, albeit his wings clipped. Andrew Scheer does not get to form government. And Jagmeet Singh, well, he went down in sort of the half number of seats and certainly on a lower vote share. Like, he did not. All of these parties did not manage expectations, and I think that's the story of last night.
Didn't manage expectations in as much as Mr. Scheer actually thought he was going to win last night? You
know, I think that they're, running on a majority message and certainly broadcasting a much closer race. While it does galvanize your base, it is also clear that, maybe he didn't know that.
Jane, was that a mistake for Mr. Scheer in the dying days of the campaign to say, I'm this close to a majority government. Come on, give it to me, please.
Yeah, I know you're supposed to be bold and you're supposed to encourage your troops, as you were saying, Melissa, but I have to tell you, if it's not there, it's not there. So it's just basically you're just blowing smoke, and it doesn't look credible for a leader to do that, and then allows everybody to say, well, look, what was he talking about at the end of it? I don't think that's a great strategy. I think, Canadians aren't stupid, and they can see what's happening. Voters aren't dumb, and for that to be going on, I just thought, from a public relations viewpoint, there was not great public relations in a lot of the last week in terms of answering questions from Mr. Trudeau, from Mr. Scheer as well. And I just think, honesty really is the best policy. As hard as it may be, honestly, Canadians know when people aren't giving the straight good.
I think another thing that contributed to this, last-minute swing of Liberal New Democrat switchers swinging strongly toward the Liberals in the final days, especially in Ontario. I think it had to do with Andrew Scheer constantly talking about a majority government. He was scaring people and he was feeding the Liberal message of, you got to vote for us to stop Andrew Scheer.
Here's John Edmondson writing in the Globe and Mail, saying, election campaigns sometimes open our eyes to realities we'd rather not see. The current campaign has revealed a Canada fractured along lines of geography and generations. Quebecers reject English Canada's multicultural consensus. The West is angry and estranged from the centre, and younger, more progressive voters resent the baby boomers' entitlements. If you're the Prime Minister sitting down today trying to cobble together a workable majority in the House of Commons with all of that as a foundation of where we're at today, where do you start?
Well, I think you start, as David said, you start talking to people. I covered, I think, three minority governments, Paul Martin to Harper minority governments, and they worked. I mean, stuff gets done, budgets get passed, and it's all because people are talking to one another and figuring things out. So you do have to have those MPs who like each other. Dominic LeBlanc was a guy that really could talk to all parties, and they would, and he would be deployed in certain situations. And I mean, David, you were helping out Paul Martin at the time. You know exactly how to work a minority. You guys had people crossing floors. I mean, Glinda Stronach crossed the floor to save a Paul Martin budget.
I don't know that we knew exactly how to do anything, given how it ended.
Well, you did it. It happened. You did it. You governed for a while. I mean, you have to talk, and you have to have the will. I don't think Canadians want to go to the polls again. I really don't. And I think that's the calculation that all the parties have to make. That in 18 months maybe, or 2 years maybe, but not right away.
Not to mention, I think minority governments are inherently a good thing. Some of our greatest achievements as Canadians have been under a minority government, mostly the Pearson government, whether that's healthcare, whether that's our flag, whether that's education assistance, right? So I think there's something inherently good about a minority government, which means that not one party has 100% of the power, and you have to negotiate and you have to work with everyone so that all facets of Canadians are represented.
There is one, as my former colleague Tim Murphy, Paul Martin's former chief of staff, pointed out, Liberal NDP governments tend to be expensive.
I think Andrew Scheer was trying to point that out as well during the campaign.
Well, it's a good thing there's some Greens in there to keep you fiscally responsible.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Expensive, but good for people.
Melissa's got the floor.
You have a country that is extremely divided after yesterday. You have the rise of the Bloc. You have Western alienation. You have two premiers in François Legault and Premier Jason Kenney that just got a whole lot stronger in terms of their position in the Federation. And then you have a Prime Minister, frankly, who has spent the last 4 years being an international rock star, who now has to look entirely inward to deal making, to caucus management, to a weaker Prime Minister's office. That's going to be very difficult. And he's not Paul Martin, and he's not Stephen Harper.
In the days before the election, you had the NDP significantly higher than they turned out to be on election day. Do you have a sense about what happened to the NDP over that last weekend of the campaign?
Yes, actually, so we've gone back and we've looked into what happened, and it's quite interesting. So a number of things happened. First of all, people got scared as we got closer to the date, especially the weekend before. It was really interesting because both Mr. Trudeau, and I think this was strategic for the Liberals, they started to say that the Conservatives were polling higher and that there was a chance the Conservatives would win. For some reason, the Conservatives didn't catch that, and they started to say that too. The electorate got scared. Those people who did not want the Conservatives to win pulled their vote from the NDP and went Liberal at the last minute. The other thing that plagued the NDP, and it's always been a bit of a problem for the NDP, is they have trouble getting out the vote. So their electors or their supporters tend to be one of two groups: young people who are less likely to come out to the polls than older people are, and political converts. So again, Polly has to learn the political convert side a little bit better, but a political convert, somebody who has never voted for that party before. You see, the Liberals and the Conservatives, a lot of these people have been voting multiple elections for the same party. Their grandparents voted for the same party. So the Liberals and Conservatives have these people in their database and can get them out to vote. They're calling them the day of, they're driving them to the polling station. The NDP don't know who their new converts are. They don't have these people in their database, so it's harder to get them out to the polls. So we saw that NDP supporters in this election were less likely to come out, even more so than in the past.
Okay, let me follow up on something you said in the midst of that answer, and that is, I do recall hearing in the dying days of the campaign, Andrew Scheer saying things like, we need a strong Conservative majority government to et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I wondered what kind of impact that would have. Did Polly pick up on what the impact of his saying that, of his putting the notion of a Tory majority out there, what that would do?
Yes, she did. And that had more damaging effect to him than his GST, his odd GST claims, the Kinsella issue, you know, when people said, why did you hire this firm to make the PPC look bad? Those things did not have an effect on his vote, but him saying that we might win a majority government worried a lot of people on the left, and they switched their votes to the Liberals.
So in hindsight, it was a mistake. It was a strategic mistake for them to be musing aloud about a Conservative majority government because I guess the people weren't ready to hand them one. Is that it?
They were not ready to hand them one. It was a big mistake. Trudeau played that and said, yeah, I think they could get that. And that got people even more nervous.
Huh. Okay, gotcha. Where did you see, I mean, we've talked about this a bit in the past, but now that it's all over and done with, maybe you can just sort of put the icing on the cake here. I can't recall an election campaign where there was so little voter volatility as this one. The two main parties seem to be tied virtually all the way through the campaign. Where, if anywhere, did you see the most change happening during the course of the writ period?
The biggest change was Quebec. That was Quebec and Ontario. We always said, you'll recall the whole time that we were on your show, we consistently said it was going to be the Liberals. When it started, it was going to be a Liberal majority, and then Brownface changed that and you know, got people thinking about all the other gaffes of the Liberals over their term in office. But it was always going to be a Liberal government.
You mentioned Doug Ford in that answer, and I want to pick up on that. The first year of his premiership, you two famously didn't get along very well, and he decided to cut the size of Toronto City Council in half, and you were caught unawares by that, and I think it's fair to say that your relationship was pretty terrible. What's it like now?
It's a work in progress, but much improved, I would say, because, look, I mean, I fought back. I mean, it wasn't even so much on the size of the council. I fought back, but I knew it was kind of a losing wicket because the Constitution is clear. It shouldn't be this way. I mean, all these years later, we should have had a modernized Constitution, but we all know the realities of trying to change it, and nobody's got an appetite for that. So I knew that that was a losing wicket for us in terms of the law. And so what I really fought back on behalf of the City of Toronto, not because I was trying to engage in a fight with Doug Ford or anybody else. It doesn't matter to me who was there. He was there, and they tried to impose unilaterally in the middle of the year cutbacks on things like public health and a number of other areas. And I fought back, I believe, on behalf of the people of Toronto very effectively.
You went door to door.
I did.
You were knocking on doors.
And I would have continued to go door to door for weeks on end until we achieved at least some of what we wanted to achieve, which was to save these programs from unilateral thoughtless cutbacks that seem to be done almost by people closing their eyes and drawing a pencil line through a budget item. So that, I think, marked a turning point in that I think they recognize the fact, as I have from the beginning, we all have to work together. The taxpayers all pay the bills for all these programs, public health and everything else, child care, and they don't expect one or the other government to be acting unilaterally just to cut stuff out because they had a problem or because they felt like it. And so I think now we're working much more effectively. The transit deal being a great example of that. I mean, Caroline Mulroney, Kinga Surma, and the Premier have all worked well with us, and our officials worked well with each other to get a deal done that I believe, if we can move it forward and get the things built, will be historic.
There was a time, though, when there was a time you would find out about policies coming down from Queen's Park,
including uploading,
in a text message the night before the announcement was going to be made.
That's changed.
Those days are gone.
I have ministers now coming to my office, and by the way, I would happily go to their office if they phone and said, "Can you come up and see me?" But they actually come to my office and sit down and say, "This is what we're thinking of doing. What do you think of that? What are the implications of that for Toronto?" It's a sea change. It's a dramatic sea change.
Why do you think he's seen the light on that?
I think he, first of all, made some changes in his government that I think were important.
That is a sly reference to the fact that Dean French is no longer chief of
Well,
staff.
I think that was a contributor. Again, that's no disrespect to Mr. French. Everybody has their own style, but I think the style that was adopted during those early times was a very aggressive style that said, well, maybe we'll think to let them know we're going to change something in their city, or maybe we won't. I don't really know. I wasn't there. I just know the result was very unsatisfactory from the standpoint of a kind of cooperative relationship that must exist between the country and the province's largest city and its economic engine.
The city has got to do a lot to get people moving, because it is not sitting still while we wait a decade or 15 years to build these things. They're long-term projects, and we are still struggling in traffic and congestion now. So the city needs to get serious about raising revenue to build more short-term, quick to deploy options, and they need to get innovative. And think about things like more King Street pilots, things like that.
Let me do one more round on the notion of whether the subway ownership should have been uploaded to the province. And I know there is consensus at this table on that. There is a discordant voice out there on this. Toronto Star columnist Martin Redcon, who writes, there is a reason why major metropolitan regions like New York and London have handed control of their sprawling commuter networks to truly regional decision-making bodies, rather than remaining at the mercy of local politicians whose first allegiance is to their city power base. Putting the capital-intensive rail lines on the province's books also permits deficit financing that Toronto cannot undertake on its own. He's in favor of the uploading. The Conservative Party of Ontario, once upon a time, was in favor of the uploading. Mr. Ford has backed down on taking ownership of this transit system. Why do you think, ultimately?
Well, it's one of those things. I think there's no question they could have taken the subways. They would have had to allow the TTC to continue to operate, because to your point, we want it to be an integrated system. So you can't take one piece of the system away. And so there's challenges with that. I think the reason they wanted to do it was so they could debt finance against the asset to build the subway. But now they've got another way of funding it with contribution of the federal government. They don't need to do that anymore. And I mean, and to the point you raised, it's a headache running the transit system. And my guess is the Conservative government has enough headaches with what's going on across the school board negotiations and healthcare and everything else. They actually don't need this transit headache. They found a way to get their subways built. They found a way to continue to keep the TTC operational. The city and the province are in agreement. So, I think it could have been uploaded. I don't know that it would have been in the long-term interest of the city to have that happen.
Declare victory and go home.
Declare victory and go home. Yeah.
Let's go through now. Okay, I'm going to beg your indulgence while we go through a bit of detail here, because Lorraine Barton's sitting in for Sheldon Osmond today in the director's chair, and we're going to go through. Lorraine, I'm going to ask you to bring up these four maps one by one by one by one, and let's go through the four priorities that have been laid out, and we'll get all of you to weigh in with your thoughts. This is the so-called Ontario Line, 16 kilometers of track connecting the Ontario Science Centre in the northeast to Ontario Place and Exhibition Place on the Western Lakeshore, and that's supposed to be by the end of 2027, price tag almost $11 billion. Let's hold off there, and I want to get everybody's take on the feasibility of doing this. I've heard, for example, Adam Vaughan, the newly re-elected MP, say, it's just drawing lines on a map. We have no idea how feasible this is. Maddie, is it feasible?
I think we have to split this into different segments. The original relief line that goes from Bloor to Osgood, I think, is buildable, and it's great that this project is going up to Eglinton in the first phase. There are important communities there that are really suffering from a lack of transit up towards the Science Centre. It's really key that they're getting transit in the first phase. The phase further west out to Ontario Place, that has never been studied before. That is a squiggle on a map that's going to need a lot more detail. In terms of whether this is feasible, we're still at very early days. And that means that as we get more details, it's very likely the cost is going to go up and we're going to see time delays. The other issue is in the portion south of Gerrard. They're talking about going above ground in the places where they build, either on an elevated guideway or at grade. That is a really tight corridor there, and there's some real questions about whether it can be built in a way that isn't extremely disruptive to the communities that surround the line.
Karen, your take on the Ontario line.
Oh, I mean, it's absolutely feasible. It's just whether it can be built within the costs that they're suggesting it can be built within.
And the timelines,
and
too.
the timelines, too. I mean, and there's no question, to the point you raised, there will likely be changes because their original iteration may have to be reconfigured. It may not go all the way to Ontario Place. But I think the key piece is if it goes up to Eglinton and then connects to the Young University Spadina line. I think that is a key piece of infrastructure that we need to build if we're actually going to extend the subway north of Steeles.
Charisse?
Yeah, I agree with both Maddie and Karen. It's a critical piece. This is one of the most important things that we need built, so let's get building it. I agree with Maddie. Let's start with the north part of it. That's the most critical. It seems to already have the most design going for it, and then design the southern portion while that's being built.
If you want to talk about homelessness, specifically, you think you've got to address the whole housing market in general? Philosophically, help me understand that. Why?
Well, there's different kinds of approaches, and some approaches to addressing housing, and in particular, people who are in the most need, people that you see on the street corner who may have an addiction or may have some other challenges. That ends up in the emergency category. And the challenge is, if you focus on the emergencies, we can't be providing housing that will house people as homes and provide them with safe places to be. So our emphasis is a bit messed up. And if we look at a city like Helsinki, Helsinki now has the great claim that they have eradicated homelessness in the city. Now, we tend to think that homelessness is too challenging. It's not something we can fix, that there are really complex needs that cannot be addressed in our housing system. But Helsinki did something fascinating. They said, you know what, we're going to stop focusing primarily on the emergency, and we're actually going to look farther up the continuum of housing and ensure that we're providing for housing for people all the way along the continuum, recognizing that people kind of get bumped down. And by the continuum, I mean you've got market housing. And in general, we've really assumed that most people will be housed through market housing. That's sort of been our assumption since the Second World War, that most people will be able to buy a house someday. Ironically, in a city like Toronto, less than 50% of residents own a home. So you've got a lot of people that are in the middle that rent housing. Now there's luxury rental and there's affordable rental. And the challenge is we haven't been building affordable rental. So what happens if you can't afford affordable rental? Where do you go?
You move down to the next place on the continuum.
Exactly. So what's been happening is that we've been seeing emergency shelters when the weather gets cold. We're seeing every year a bigger increase in the number of people in the emergency situation, meaning that they're out on the street, they need to be in a shelter that's it's not a home, it's just a spot to keep them out of the cold. Why is that happening? Well, a big part is that this entire spectrum is screwed up right now. We know that accessing home ownership for most people, there's no way. It's completely out of reach. So those people end up in rental housing. Now, what happens when you see a big part of the population pushed into rental housing? People who were previously in that rental housing, they get pushed farther down. So if we want to address homelessness and emergency shelters, we need to really be focusing on two things. We need to be focusing on affordable rental housing. That's the first thing. And the second is transitional housing.
That is just some of what we covered this week on the agenda. For more, including the full conversations, you can visit our website, tvo.org, our YouTube channel at youtube.com/theagenda, or our Twitter feed. That's twitter.com/theagenda.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.